The Gospel of John presents us abundance in multiple occasions. In the very beginning, in the wedding at Cana, in the second chapter, he offers, if you count, 180 gallons of quality wine. He asks the disciples to fill those jars, not scarcely, but abundantly to the brim. In John 10:10 it says, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." Have life to the full. How beautiful. The promise is to experience life in its fullness, not scarcely, but abundantly. Of course, the promise of life to its fullness is not just for some people, but for all people. The same theme of abundance we see in the story of anointing woman that we have just read. The story of anointing woman found its place in all four Gospels, Gospel variant narratives. I want to say variant is a forbidden word in COVID context. In a Bible study that I have led a while ago, it was interesting that we have four variants of this story, but I have learned during that Bible study a fifth variant that is widespread in popular Christianity. I planned on discussing the text from the Mark's Gospel about the woman who anoints Jesus' head and whom Jesus highly commends. And I have requested someone in the Bible study group to read the text. After finished reading, I asked them what did they know about the woman who anointed Jesus. Almost everyone in the group affirmed that she was a sinful woman and that she washes the feet with her tears and repents for her sins. Mind you, we have read that story from Mark's Gospel, but they were referring to the story from Luke's. I was not surprised because it has been my observation that the story of the sinful woman who weeps and anoints Jesus with her tears is the most popular one, the most remembered one, which gets the visibility. I wonder why. Certainly not by chance, but by choice. Moving on, I then asked, "Do you remember her name?" And they have confidently said that she was Mary Magdalene. And then we read the text again. Remember, it was from Mark. The woman is unnamed. I have asked them, why did they think it was Mary Magdalene? They scratched their head and said, but they definitely knew it was written somewhere. So we read the text from John's account that we have just read today. And they were surprised to learn, after all, it was not Mary Magdalene, but it was Mary of Bethany, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. Remember, our text for the Bible study was from Mark's account again. I asked them what the woman did in the story, and they answered that she washed the feet of Jesus. So we read the text again to find out that the Mark, the unnamed woman, anoints the head of Jesus. She performs a prophetic act. She anoints the head of Jesus like any prophet would do to a king in our tradition, in the biblical tradition. And Jesus commends her lavishly and says, wherever the gospel is preached, she must be remembered. Well, we have done quite the opposite. The anointing woman who is not remembered for the prophetic act of how she prepares Jesus to what is to come. Anointing woman is associated somehow to the sinful woman in Luke who weeps, the appealing image of a woman for our culture and society. A woman weeping at the feet of Jesus fits imagination, isn't it? Distorting further, she was given a name as Mary Magdalene. Once again, not remembering Mary Magdalene for being the first person who witnesses the resurrected Lord, but by her past. That was the memory that stayed with people. prophetic image of the woman anointing the head of Jesus is uncomfortable image after all. So the popular Christianity settles with a woman being at the feet of Jesus, weeping, repenting for her sins. Not only in the context of the story of the anointed woman, but in every part of our life, we can create distorted versions of the narratives and let our lens determine what we see. Sometimes it is important that we become intentional to clean that lens or to move from the space that we are looking from so we can see things differently. And it has to be intentional act. We have been living in the times that every story is distorted, politically tainted, received with bias, labeled and profiled. In the process, we are at loss of authenticity unless we step back and become intentional to see things for what they are truly about. There is the truth, and then your truth, and then my truth, and then their truth. And being aware that we can never be absolutely know what the truth is, it will keep us humble. While being aware of our truth and my truth, is it not important to be open to their truth, to listen to their story, and to understand their perspective? As society, we are so divided. May it be COVID protocols, global crisis that we are experiencing, or even the issue of Will Smith and Chris Rock. We are so divided. We have lost the gift of listening, learning, showing empathy. In the text we see, Mary anoints the feet of Jesus with pure nard, that is very expensive perfume. Mary displays what is in her heart, love and devotion for Jesus. Jesus is visiting their home after he raised Lazarus. Their loving little brother came back from dead. Lazarus was brought to life, something that was unheard of. If they had any doubts about Jesus with this experience, they are only filled with devotion for the wonder of his works. And you can only imagine the thankfulness and gratitude that the sisters would have had towards Jesus for giving them back their beloved brother. They cannot love him enough. He is heading to Jerusalem and stops by their house one last time. Mary pouring over the costly perfume is not an act of generosity. It is not her lavish hospitality. It is not even outlandish affection for Jesus, but it is her humble devotion for Jesus. In complete submission, offering to him the best of what she has. No one can underestimate the act of Mary towards Jesus, especially after the greatest gift the family has received. Lazarus is among their midst after he is dead. Can you imagine? Devotion and worship kind of taken a back seat in today's culture again. And devotion and worship is important not because it is obligation expected by a narcissistic God to telling us to praise and worship. No. It is not a rule to follow. It is not even a tradition to observe on Sunday mornings. It is not even a sacred ritual, but it is a deep emotion that is in response to what God is for us, in response to God's abundance of God's love that we experience in our daily life. As Jesus is on his way to wash the feet of his disciples on the day of Passover, he allows himself to receive the same. As they condemned her, particularly in this text, Judas Iscariot, Jesus defends Mary. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. There is time for everything. A time to be born and time to die. Time to weep and time to laugh. Time to mourn and time to dance. And perhaps There is time to offer and time to accept. And Jesus accepts. He lets himself to be anointed. In the last week, Pastor Ginny and I had talked, while talking, twice Pastor Ginny mentioned about the podcast she listened, Bishop Curry's words, a time to stand up and time to sit down. And there is time for both. What determines that time? It's not just what we feel, but it brings in effect. What it brings in effect, the greater good than just how we feel at the time. In the midst of these holy, deeply holy moments, there is a disturbance that comes from the closest circle of Jesus. His very own disciples comment, destroying the moment of love and devotion, causing brokenness. Speaking about words matter. When it is simply time to sit down, they stood up. When it is time for mic drop, they pick up the megaphone, causing brokenness, causing damage. If we don't know what drives us to stand up, or what keeps us sitting down, then there is a chance, even in the name of good, we can do things that can cause damage, that could bring brokenness. When disciples say, "Why waste? Why can't it be given to the poor?" Jesus responds, "Leave her alone." Yes, leave them alone. Let them be. Let them have their holy moments. Give them their space. In our day-to-day life, we may need to be bold to stand up, but it takes courage to sit down in humility, to step aside, to let them be, and to leave them alone. As we walk into the Holy Week, may God fill us with love and devotion as in Mary, and bless us to find such holy moments to be with God in our spiritual journey. May God bless these words.